Get in, nerds. We are playing Burden of Command. I'm not excited to look at this screen. Let's see how it is. Okay. 4 replacements? God damn it. Fucking Command? Those fucking bastards better not give me anything important to do next scenario. Alright. Well, we're gonna shell out... Cripes, I've taken a lot of hits. I think we're just gonna put... We're just gonna put replacements into this unit and guide them back up to level 5. And that's it. Because I only got 4 replacements. So, we'll figure out how to deal with the next battle. This sucks. You've been giving me 18 to 20 replacements this whole time, and now I'm getting none. Fuck's sake. Alright. That's okay. Let's continue our journey. Outside Munich. München. 4th May, 1945, Germany.
One thing they told me about when we were going overseas that there was no churches. We didn't have, I was a Catholic, and they said, shoot, first place I went to, we went to church, and there was no problem whatsoever. The only thing is that when they'd go to speak, I didn't understand what they were saying, but I could follow everything in the Mass fine.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you were misled at all in terms of what the enemy was like, and that opinion changed or not?
Well, yeah, I think so. I think when we first went over there, we were then under the impression that it was it was going to be quite ruthless, but it so happens the only one that was ruthless was the SS.
Not so different. May 1945, Munich.
We didn't know it then, but our war was over.
Munich barely puts up a fight. Bombed out buildings, scarred by aerial bombardment, gape on silent streets. For all the Nazi bluster about never surrendering, about victory to the end and about fighting to the end and securing ultimate victory, the spiritual capital of the National Socialist movement falls in a day. The hotels and official sites are swiftly occupied by Allied brass and war correspondents, but there are plenty of abandoned buildings, and so for the first time in a long time, Nickel Company is close to being comfortable. Wonder who's in charge now, Crosley muses as he takes a deep swig from a bottle of dark wine. Satisfied, he leans against the stone wall of the wine cellar currently serving as your CP. Now that they say that Hitler's gone and shot himself, that is. Some guy named Donuts, I think. Morris answers as he plucks a bottle out of Crosley's hands and takes a slug of his own. That would be Karl Donitz, the head of the Kriegsmarine, I believe. Some guy named Donuts. Good old Morris. The cellar falls silent for a moment, like a cast of actors waiting for the next line. Morris considers another drink. Ah, hell, I probably just heard it wrong. Donitz, interjects a new voice from the arched stone doorway. The guy's name is Karl Donitz. He used to run Hitler's navy. Well, back when he still had one. It's Lieutenant Cloer, the lanky and usually cheerful CO of the recon platoon. But there's a darkness that gathers as he steps towards you. Captain, this comes directly from Colonel Heinches. You and your platoon leaders and a command group will be ready to go in 10 minutes. Cloer leans in, his voice just above a whisper. The 42nd Division found something big, and we need to see it for ourselves. Do you know what's going on? Why us? A field trip? Can I call in sick? You know I'll go with that sarcasm. Afraid not, Cloer replies. The colonel requested you and Nickel Company specifically. I don't think you can get out of this one with a doctor's note. After all you and Nickel Company have done already, you'd think they'd give you a break. 15 minutes later, you weave down the crowded streets of Munich, past army trucks, pedestrians, and piles of rubble as Sergeant Washington tries to keep up with Lieutenant Clor's lead vehicle. In between near accidents, your platoon leaders watch the buildings become smaller and older until they give way to farmhouses, stone churchyards, and stretches of carefully trimmed trees. Looks like we're headed out into the countryside, Captain. Sergeant Washington, your ever-observant company armorer, notes as he keeps his eyes firmly fixed on the dust-covered rear bumper of the Jeep in front of you. Gotta wonder what has the Colonel all riled up like this. I hope it's where the Krauts have been building those rockets, the ones they've been launching in London. Thompson shouts over the roar of the engines. I heard somewhere they go 5 times the speed of sound. If we found out how the Germans were able to do that, boy, we could even go to the moon one day. Oh, man. You get him, Thompson. You get one of those rockets. Stern, on the other hand, is anything but talkative. He stares ahead, his hands 2 white-knuckled fists on his lap. He stares straight ahead, eyes narrowed in... worry? No, not worry. Anger. Lieutenant Stern's default emotion. I mean, in fairness, it's war. Beside him, Lieutenant Rao is just as tense. The 2 men don't seem to be able to look at one another. Sergeant Washington nods along as he drives. The Jeeps now motor along a stretch of open fields and through a row of pleasant, unwashed houses, all seemingly untouched by the war. A strange smell nips at your nose as the Jeeps sweep through the curves near a picturesque little town. Once you settle back into a straighter portion of the road, the reek of exhaust nearly covers the other scent. What about you, Captain? Sergeant Washington asks as he turns off the main road. Where do you think we're going? If I knew, I'd have told you already. I don't want to speculate, Sergeant. The Colonel wouldn't have called us out for small fry. Personally, I want to know what Nate thinks first. Sorry, Sergeant. You smell that? I'm gonna go with that last one. Washington takes a moment to sniff the air. Yeah, now that you mention it, Captain, I do smell something. The smell grows stronger. It holds the odor of unwashed bodies, the iron tang of blood, the sulphurous stink of decay, and above it all, a sickly sweet stench. It smells like burning human flesh. Where are we headed? Brace myself. That smells like burning human flesh. The road opens onto a wide plaza. To one side, the statue of a German soldier stands, stone rifle at parade rest as he stares off into the distance, his back turned to a terrible sight just a few hundred feet away. Stopped trains have been common enough, but there's nothing ordinary about these boxcars sitting on the railway siding. Strange bundles of rags lie sprawled out on the grass around it, and a heap of something pale and limp lies beyond the open door of the nearest car. Wild-eyed men in olive drab, the 42nd Division insignia on their sleeves, cradle their rifles around the train. One of them darts a glance back at the rag bundles, then swiftly turns away. The Jeep ahead of you diverts toward the siding, and Sergeant Washington follows. The stench is overpowering. Death lies ahead. Try to breathe. I'm going to try to breathe. It's important to stay hydrated, and it's also important to stay aerated. Short breaths, long breaths. The stench remains overpowering. A part of you screams in warning because it knows what lies ahead. Lieutenant Clore halts the Jeep short of the perimeter and dismounts. Colonel Heinches is right behind him. So is Major Flynn and the rest of the battalion commanders. They advance toward the closest of the ragged clumps. One by one they halt and stare at the bundle of rags at their feet with a mixture of disgust, pity, and rage. Graphic image warning. A pale, emaciated hand sticks out of the lice-ridden heap. So do 2 skeletal feet. The hollow face of what had once been a human being is little more than skin, stretched over dead bones, twisted into a final rictus, eyes staring wide and skyward, at a salvation that never came. There are more of them, strewn all along the track. Dozens of what had once been human beings. More lace spilled out of the boxcars. Tangles of thin, bone-white limbs and dead-eyed faces, piled like sacks of wheat one on top of the other, attended only by the buzz of insects and that awful, choking stench. Jesus, what happened to these people? Who did this? Christ, I need some goddamn air. Who did this? You know the answer before the words even come out of your mouth. The SS, who else? A guard from the 42nd says, as he steps up next to you, his voice hollow and his eyes dull, as if the bright corners of his soul have just been sandpapers. Herded those poor people into the train like cattle, locked them up for weeks with no food and no water. Some might have been dead for weeks. There's only one survivor. If I ever get my hands on any of those bastards, they'd have to clean them up with a mop. Your heart thuds in your chest as the sight begins to sink in. That terrible stench of death fills your every breath. The sight of those terrible starved faces stay with you even when you close your eyes. Your stomach churns. Try and say something, try to lighten the mood, try to calm down. I think for once, Lieutenant Murphy might just need to shut the fuck up. You try to grab hold of your racing thoughts, but then your gut churns. The evil committed here lies heavy with every breath. Combat fatigue +10. You're a soldier, you remind yourself. You've seen battle before. You've seen killing before. But this isn't a battlefield. These people weren't killed in a fair fight or even caught in a crossfire. Someone planned this. Someone made the conscious decision to consign all of these people to a slow death by starvation and suffocation for no reason other than to make them die in the most horrible way possible. This wasn't war. This was sadism. Captain? A hand on your shoulder pulls you back from a bleak brink. Grant steps in front of you, concern written all over his face. Captain, are you alright? Yeah, I'll be fine, Jack. Just give me a minute. No. I'm just gonna say no. I'm not alright. This is not alright. No. No. You don't need to say any more. Grant understands. Colonel wants us to keep going, he says after a long moment of silence. He says there's some kind of forced labor camp up the road. That's where the train was headed for, he explains. He asked those Rainbow Division guys about it. They said it was real bad. Worse than this. Worse than this? I believe them. Real bad? Worse than this? I don't know. God, I hope not, he replies softly. He spares a glance at the train and shakes his head. Christ, how bad does it have to be to rattle guys who have to guard that? Ahead, Colonel Heinz's signals for you and the battalion commanders to follow him up the road. It looks like you're about to find out firsthand. Nobody talks on the way up the road. Not Colonel Heinz, not Major Flynn, not even your enlisted men. Everyone walks in silence, broken only by the thump of brick and roadway against your boots and the wind amid spring leaves. The forest closes in again. The trees spread their shade. For a moment the green envelops you and hides the horror behind. But the stench only grows stronger. Stern's combat fatigue +10. The trees part again to reveal a squat, whitewashed whitewashed enclosure, which extends far... Sorry. Let me try that line read again. The trees part ahead, again, to reveal a squat, whitewashed gatehouse that looms over a massive, barbed wire enclosure, which extends far to the right. To the left, a tall brick chimney rises amid a stand of trees. Beyond the enclosure, you catch sight of industrial yards and smokestacks that sprawl out on all sides. Stern's hands clench into fists as the colonel leads you along the brick path, between two rows of carefully manicured poplar trees and up towards the gatehouse. Through the archway wait a set of closed wrought iron gates. The bars are reinforced with lengths of thick wire. There are words worked into the center, a slogan worked in cold black iron. Arbeit macht frei. The infamous words. What is this place? What do those words mean? Mate, you alright? Rao, is something wrong? Nate, you alright? Yes, Captain. Just peachy, Captain, Stern replies through clenched teeth. No need to worry about me, Captain. I'll be fine, Captain. Clearly, there's no way he meant it. 2 Rainbow Division men guard the gate, one at each side of the archway. When the colonel steps toward them, they bar the way. No, sir, you hear one say. I have orders not let anyone in. American, anybody. For a moment, it seems as if the colonel would simply order them out of the way. Then he backs away and starts back down the road. With a wave, you follow. Try to take a peek inside the gate, obviously. You linger for a moment to see what lies beyond the iron bars. The brick road continues past the gate, flanked by row after row of flimsy-looking wooden barracks. Bundles of rags lie strewn along the roadways, left where they fall. Some close enough for you to see the... Someone shouts your name. You pull yourself away from the sight beyond and follow the colonel. Heinches walks about 50 feet back, just enough to be out of earshot before making a huddle with the 3 battalion commanders. They discuss things for a moment. Then he pulls the rest of you in, and his expression is grim. We're not getting in through the gate, he concludes, then shrugs. But we've climbed fences before. Let's find another way in. You and the others follow the colonel as he walks around along the fence past guard towers and stands of poplar trees until the barbed wire gives way to a stucco wall. He sizes up the height for a moment, then looks to each side. Finally, confident that nobody who would protest is watching, he leaps up, grabs the top of the wall with his hands, and then carefully hauls himself up with a scrap of leather. Careful, he warns as he turns to regard the rest of you still standing below him. There are chunks of glass up here. Glass? Glass? He's always looking out for us. That makes for tricky climbing. You gotta be aware of that. Glass on top makes it difficult to get over without getting cut, but at least there's no barbed wire. Heinches drops over the side, out of sight. For a moment there's only silence, and then, it's clear. Follow. We follow. Followed the leader. Followed the colonel over the wall. Achievement. The other senior officers swiftly follow the colonel's example. Then it's your turn. You hoist your way over the wall, careful not to cut yourself on the shards of glass set into the top. Your officers and command group follow your lead and down to join the colonel and the other regimental officers on the other side of the wall. The sight that greets you on the far side is beyond nightmares. Scavenger insects swarm, the stench of rotting flesh and sickness and DDT, the shriveled bodies of the dead scattered among the rows of dilapidated barracks. Yet not all are dead. No, they shamble from one barrack to another, eyes glazed with hunger and desperation. Filthy rags hang off their wasted forms. Every step could be their last. Split up and cover as much ground as you can, the colonel says with a soft, simmering fury. If you brought a camera, take pictures. Folks back home need to know what the Nazis did to these people. Heinches wastes no time in following his own advice. He heads towards the tall brick chimney. Some follow him. A few head toward the barracks and the corpse-strewn road that leads back to the gate. Follow the colonel, go down the road, take a closer look at the roadway. Christ, I just want to get out of here. Let me see. Tall brick chimney. The barracks, the corpse-strewn road that leads back to the gate. I'm going to follow the colonel. You follow the colonel away from the daylight hellscape of the camp barracks, through a tall hedge and towards the high monolith of the brick chimney. Despite the silence, there is no serenity here, only the stillness of death, and a total all-encompassing oppression. And the smell only gets stronger. You know, it's funny. In modernity, we tend to ignore smell as a sense. Like, it rarely... You can be overwhelmed by something you see. You can be overwhelmed by something you hear. You can be overwhelmed by something you feel. Those are very common and relatable things. But we're rarely, if ever, overwhelmed by a smell. When I read The Things They Carried, there's a story about, which is Jim O'Brien, who writes about the Vietnam War, and he writes about camping in a field that ends up getting shelled, and it turns out that the field... They've been told by the locals not to camp there, but they camp there anyway. And it turns out the field is a cess field, and when they get mortared presumably by the Viet Cong, the stink of the field just, like, overwhelms him and his ability to function. And that's what this reminds me of. The power of smell to destroy your ability to act. Combat fatigue plus 10. You pass over a small stream. Ahead lies a squat brick building surrounded by a carefully trimmed lawn and beds of flowers. It would have almost seemed idyllic if it weren't for the pile of bodies heaped against a wooden enclosure next to the brick wall. A tangle of bones held together only by pale membranes of stretched, rotting skin. A vast mound of human remains piled almost shoulder high. The colonel stares at the bodies for a moment, stone-faced. Then one of his officers points to a half-open door. They head into the building. That leaves you and your men alone with the bodies. I'm going to take a look at those bodies. No, I'm going to follow the colonel. The stench hits you when you follow the colonel through the door. Your eyes water afresh, even though it's the same smell that you've been breathing in for the past half hour. This is where it comes from. When your eyes adjust to the darkness, you understand exactly what it is. Combat fatigue plus 10. The room is piled with corpses that spill out from doorways to the left and the right. In the center, 5 blocks of brick and wood. At the center of each one gapes a maw of black iron. Some of them sit closed, some of them don't. The ovens are empty. You can see the gas vents, the pipes, the well-worn rolling iron stretchers. One of them still glows with hot coals, but no heat can burn the stench of death from these bricks. No fire short of hell. Keep looking. Combat fatigue plus 10. The closer you look, the more you find. Vents designed to incinerate flesh quickly. Meat hooks that hang off of overhead trolleys. Emaciated bodies still dangle from them. Rolling stretchers sized to carry human beings from those hooks into the ovens. All parts of a carefully built machine designed to dispose of bodies on a mass scale. All as part of a camp carefully engineered to turn human beings into ash. A gigantic machine designed with malice aforethought, created with military precision, designed to detain, murder, and then dispose of the evidence. Ash would be buried, wind would take away the smell. Neat. Orderly. All the carefully cultivated fruits of civilization, harvested to create a thing of absolute barbarity. You stand and stare, and the more you do, the less it is all uniquely horrible and something normal? No, not normal, but bearable. This nightmare world comes back into somber focus, and as it does, your heart ceases to hammer. Apparently, you can get used to anything. And now you're alone. Colonel Heinches and the battalion commanders are nowhere to be seen. Not even the Nickel Company men are around either. Those men are still your responsibility. A deep breath of that death-laden air, a clench of muscle to beat down the urge to gag, allows you to begin a search. Lieutenant Stern is not far from the gate. His lean frame towers over the shrunken form of a wrinkled inmate. Even from a distance, you can see tension in every inch. Where do they take the Jews? Stern asks of the emaciated old man, his face contorted with anxiety as he gropes the right words. Les Juifs? He reaches into his collar frantically, pulling out his dog tags and pointing uselessly at the H stamped on the metal. Die Juden! Where? Waren? The old man recoils, but then focuses on the dog tags, and his hunger-wasted lips curl into a frown. Ost, he replies in a hollow voice. Auschwitz, Treblinka, Majdanek, in Poland. He shakes his head again. Ost. He repeats feebly, as if that would change the nature of the answer. Ost, which means east. In Poland, mostly. Stern nods a curt thanks to the old man and walks away, his fists balled up, his jaw clenched shut. He takes a step, then another. Then he rips his helmet from his head and hurls it to the ground with a sudden and complete fury. Fuck! He screams as tears flow down his cheeks. Fuck! 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 So our options are, Christ, what did he say? Nate, what the hell's gotten into you? Lieutenant Stern, stand down. I'm not going to say either of these two. I feel like he's having the most sensible reaction to this possible. Christ, what did he say? They're not here, Stern replies, still seething with rage. They're not fucking here! For a moment, there's only silence between you and Stern, as Stern tries to swallow his anger. Deep anger. Nate Stern never swore before, but just has for the first time in nearly 3 years of war. They're already gone, he finally says. I'd hoped we could have saved them, but they're already gone. Saved who? You mean the Jews? What do you mean already gone? I mean, obviously he means, like, it's possible he means the Jews generally. It's also possible he means someone important to him. Saved who? Survivors. My people. Okay, alright. My people, Stern explains. There were millions of us in Germany before the war. Millions in France, too. I'd hoped they'd be here, but that we'd be able to rescue them, but they're not here. The Nazi bastards took to the camps in the east, the death camps. His voice breaks. My people are dead. Your people still exist stateside. All we can do is punish the bastards who did this. Maybe the Russians saved them. It's not your fault alone. Focus, Lieutenant. The war's not over. Your people still exist stateside doesn't... Like, it's true, but it doesn't really help. All we can do is punish the bastards who did this, I feel like is the right answer. Maybe the Russians saved them. That's certainly something that could have happened. You know, the Russians took a lot of... I think took all of Poland. And that's where a lot of those camps were. So... There are chances. It's not your fault alone. Again, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to say it's not your fault. Stern's combat fatigue plus 20 and realism plus 2. We fought the good fight, Stern replies. We did the right thing, and if it was too late to save everyone, then the only people to blame for that are Adolf Hitler and the guys who followed his orders. A measure of tension leaves him. We have to make sure that no sick bastard ever tries something like this again. That's still worth fighting for. For a moment, the two of you stand in silence, amidst the human wreckage around you, accompanied only by the distant groans of the suffering. Hey! A voice calls out and breaks the silence. An American voice from deeper inside the camp. You're not allowed in here. There's been a typhus outbreak inside the wire for weeks. An enlisted man with a patch from the Displaced Persons Unit 115 explains wearily as he escorts you outside the gate. We've still got more than 100 of those poor guys dying every day. The last thing we need is... The enlisted man checks himself as he spares a glance at Stern, who's still staring blankly into the distance. Captain, is he okay? You found out about the Jews? I don't know. Stern, are you okay? He'll be fine. He just needs a minute. You found out about the Jews. The enlisted man looks back at you quizzically for a moment before his eyes widen in understanding. Is he? Yes, I see. I mean, come on, man. Like, I mean, I guess. So, obviously, if this were a later era in history, this would be not necessarily a right assumption. Like, you can be upset. You can know. You could be upset about a genocide happening even if they're not your people, but I think it's... The thoughts about that kind of thing weren't as sophisticated back in 1945, so I think this is a fair understanding. He presses his lips together in a grim line. I understand. That must have been hard, knowing that we arrived too late to rescue all but a few of them. The DP man's eyes widen in realization. Are you? I see. My condolences then. There was a rabbi with the 42nd. He had the same kind of look when he found out how few of your people were still alive here. Wait a minute, Stern interjects, his eyes filled with anxious energy. Some of them are here, alive? The enlisted man looks at Stern for a moment, his mouth half open. Then he looks at you, then back to Stern. His expression flickers, tightens, resolves. Follow me. The two of you follow the enlisted man down the rows of barracks, past the remains of the dead and wasted forms of those barely living. He leads you to one bunkhouse in particular. These are the Jewish barracks, he says quietly. A lot of the people inside were dead when we found them, but not all of them. Stern steps towards the open door, towards the curious, emaciated faces which peer out of the darkness, the yellow Star of David prominent on their ragged clothes. Then he pauses. I've had this moment playing in my head for years, he says quietly. But now that I'm here, I don't know what to say. Say whatever you think best. You don't have to say anything at all. I'll have time to get cold feet, Nate. You don't have to say anything at all. Stern nods quietly, but he doesn't back away. He takes a deep breath, his shoulders tense as he steps into the darkness of the crowded barracks, his head held high. They gather around him, men, women, and children. Some reach out to him hesitantly, their movements made tentative by starvation and sickness. Stern says a few words too quiet for you to hear. It's only when the pale fingers rush in to embrace him do you realize that he's speaking Yiddish. The figures inside envelop Stern with excitable chatter, their faces covered in tears and gratitude. Their gestures take on a sudden desperate animation as he tries his best to answer what must be a storm of questions. When he's finally able to pull himself away, the anxiety is gone from his face, yet it only takes a few seconds for the grief to creep back into his features. Feeling better? We were able to save some of them after all? What did they tell you? I'm going to go with number 2. We were able to save some of them after all. Stern's combat fatigue -10. Not enough of them, Stern replies. Don't get me wrong, it's good to know we weren't too late for some of them, but they told me about what they'd been through. They told me who they'd lost. One lady thought I was her son. Said he'd have been my age if they hadn't. He takes another look over his shoulder. Shame and joy and grief chase each other across his face. I need some time to think about it. Somewhere not here. The enlisted man takes the two of you up to a tent set up in the open square where medical personnel stack crates, prepare soup, and set up tents. Your other officers and men from Nickel are already there. Rao and Stern exchange a few quiet words as they're both dusted with DDT. Neither were in a particularly good mood before, and their short conversation doesn't help. The walk back to the gate is made in silence. There's no point in discussing what you've seen inside the wire. Everyone has had their fill of horror at the depth of the suffering which had been inflicted in that grisly enclosure. For that, silence is more than enough. When you meet the other officers from your regiment in the shadow of the gatehouse, they're just as quiet. Major Flynn, Lieutenant Clower, and all the others only look at you and nod meaningfully. They can see that you've seen what they've seen. Colonel Inch's face is a mask of tight-lipped, taut-jawed fury. When someone asks if it's time to head back to the jeeps, it's all he can do to nod. There's an ox cart by the train full of bodies when you return to it. A pair of grim-eyed Rainbow Division men guard the skittish animals, but the men and women who load limp, emaciated bodies into the back are no soldiers. They wear the jackets of lawyers and clerks, the blouses of housewives, the caps of day laborers and farmers. They're people in the town of Dachau. They're the people of the town of Dachau. Those who watched as their neighbors and countrymen were arrested by the SS and sent here to be starved or beaten or tortured. They lived in the stench of death and burning bodies, and they did nothing. They also gave each other self-pitying looks as they load the ox cart with the bodies of those killed by a regime they had loyally obeyed just days before. To them, you'd think they were the ones who were wronged. Hopefully they'll learn their lesson. The Germans deserve worse. One day they'll understand this is not my problem, and now they follow our orders. I'm just going to say hopefully they learned their lesson. Maximum mindset diversity reached. Idealism capped at 2. Combat fatigue -10. Okay, all right. So I it's not the diversity mindset, but it's the I've got 3 mindsets already. So my idealism is capped at 2. Which means I get combat fatigue minus 10. Your fellow GIs will teach those German civilians a bitter lesson. Hitler gave the orders, but the people supported him, funded him, worked in his factories, and sent their sons into his armies. The SS ran the concentration camps, but they couldn't have done it without the help from these same men and women who are looking for pity. Perhaps one day the people of Germany will learn their lesson and understand the hand they played in all this. If not, then there will be another war. The colonel's anger only seems to deepen. He mutters something in rough German as he climbs into his jeep, and the nearby civilians recoil. The company returns to their vehicles. The specter of the train, the bodies, and the ox cart disappears from sight, but not memory. The road back to Munich beckons. There's still a war, and your men are certainly reminded of why they're fighting. Oh God. This wasn't the only camp. Play video, warning graphic images, or try and forget. We're gonna play the video.
I soon found out we'd taken the Belsen concentration camp. Well, I'm not squeamish. I've seen amputations, operations, deaths long before I went to the army in 41. I was a warden. I lost count of all the arms and legs I pulled out of the wreckage down in Croydon and got quite used to it. But this was different. Very different. I don't know any words big enough to make you understand what we all felt. All I can say, and I'm proud of this, is that I had to fall out and be quickly sick in the courtyard. As I say, I'm not squeamish, but, well, I'm human, and thank God for it.
There were, of course, other camps. Now what? 3rd May 1945, east of Munich. Hitler dead. Fuhrer fell at CP, German radio says. Dönitz at helm, vows war will continue. May 2nd issue of Stars and Stripes. Your bones are numb from the thrum of the jeep. Your whole regiment has been driving along the Autobahn for days, often with Nickel Company in the vanguard. At this rate, you'll soon run out of Germany. The steady clank from the Stuart tanks just ahead has become a constant companion to the stink of gas fumes. Then the lead armored vehicle suddenly slews to a halt. There in the distance, or at least well out of rifle range, lies a roadblock. It had been a while, First Sergeant Grant says as squealing brakes bring the jeep up short atop the snow-slicked road. Apparently, the weather in Germany doesn't know it's May yet. At your gesture, Grant begins issuing the usual preparatory orders. The men of Thompson's 1st platoon spill out of the back of the nearest truck and take cover behind the tanks with weapons at the ready. Your veterans know they might get shot even now. After all, the Reich kept fighting even after Dachau. This is no ordinary roadblock. It's a wreck with wings. Fist-sized holes pepper the fuselage and the parting signature of some Army Air Forces fighter jock. Given that other downed planes have been pushed into nearby woods, this one is not here by accident. Check out the squads, push the flanks, and secure the area. Low chance of casualties, possible loss of trust. Have the tanks blast away to trigger any booby traps. Very low chance of casualties, possible large loss of trust. Call in artillery to unlikely enemy concentrations, -1 prestige. Has Sparks notify battalion about needing engineers. I can live with 1 prestige loss. Call in artillery. Hey, you bastards. Damn this infernal tooltip. The infernal lying tooltip. You call in the coordinates. So prestige -2 instead of -1. You call in the coordinates. A minute later, 3 rounds slam 50 east and 20 long of a knot of trees. As you give the correction, a figure stands up from the shadows and tries to flee, clutching a bulky rifle. The enemy runs for his life, tossing his rifle and helmet aside as he clears out in the nick of time. When the artillery fire lifts, your men move forward to clear the area for certain. Your men stalk the enemy. It's a kid, Sergeant Crossley calls back. He's running like hell's on his heels. I'd better go see this, investigate the enemy position, enter a crucible. Or, I don't need to see this, ignore the enemy position. Combat fatigue -10, realism -1. No, I'm going to go in and see it. You head into the woods. Grant falls in beside. The nest is a tiny one. A big coat is in the usual field gray, splotched wet with snow. This soldier, a boy, couldn't be more than 12 years old, if that. He'd only been a little taller than the rifle he'd discarded. We shouldn't have to kill children in war. Advanced idealism, combat fatigue plus 20, realism plus 2. We may see more of this until the war ends. Advanced zeal, combat fatigue plus 10, realism plus 1. Kids should have thought this through. Combat fatigue minus 10. Ugh, that's brutal. Sniper flushed from hiding without loss. Combat fatigue minus 10. Will the replacements understand this? Advanced discipline, combat fatigue plus 20, realism plus 2. I'm going to go with number 4. I think Lieutenant Murphy is still, hey man, we lived. That's the goal. Sniper flushed from hiding without loss. Maximum professionalism previously attained, combat fatigue minus 10. The reports almost write themselves at this point. Lieutenant Thompson meets your gaze as his men return to their truck. I hope he lives, Lieutenant. I hope he lives, Lieutenant. Thompson advances compassion, his combat fatigue plus 20, realism plus 2. You did everything by the book. Thompson advances doctrine, his combat fatigue plus 10, realism plus 1. He pulled the trigger, Lieutenant, not you. Thompson advances idealism again. You did what you could, Lieutenant. Thompson advances zeal, his combat fatigue plus 10, realism plus 1. Or sometimes there's no good solution. Thompson advances cunning, his combat fatigue plus 20 and realism plus 2. Thompson's getting pretty high in combat fatigue, so I'm going to give him another point of idealism. He was tricked, Captain. Tricked and lied to, Thompson says, and swings up onto the waiting truck. He settles onto a bench with an old man's sigh. I hope he'll get a chance to realize that. Thompson advances idealism. It's true. Your men get to work clearing the fragments of the plane from the crossroads. It's then they notice something odd. The plane has no propellers and never did. Plane without any blades, PFC Roberts says, mostly to himself. Guess we should call it a glider, Morris says, and manages to chuckle afterward. Or a crasher. It's a jet, First Sergeant Grant says. The flyboys have been tangling with them for months. I swear, the Nazis get all the best toys first. Don't ask me how it works, though. I'm not an engineer. The next morning, you're summoned to the battalion CP. A scent of strong coffee leads you to a sprawl of hastily erected canvas. Once inside, Major Flynn motions you over. I heard you called for artillery yesterday, Captain. Hope you hit what you aimed for, he says. Looked like an ambush, so we flushed him out. There's a kid in uniform. What can I do for you, Major? Looked like an ambush, so we flushed him out. Good. Maybe the Jerrys are done now, Major Flynn says. Well, look, we've been going pretty fast lately, not like fighting in Italy at all. How's your company fixed for gas? Well, sir, my rates are reasonable. Sarcasm plus 1? We're fine. Sarcasm minus 1. Well, sir, my rates are reasonable. Helps to sell wholesale, Major Flynn remarks. There's a mischievous grin edging into his lips as the man can barely restrain himself as he slips a battered postcard off the photography board. It bears the image of an idyllic retreat. How do you feel about getting some mountain air? Before you can reply, a familiar command vehicle rumbles into view outside the tent flap. Colonel Heinches strides inside. Enlisted men clear out as he heads directly toward you two. Major, get your battalion loaded up and on the double. Iron Mike's got one last objective for us, and he wants us there before anyone else, Colonel Heinches says. With great care, he extracts a worn but glossy map from a pocket and proffers it to you. The buildings marked on it have been amended with familiar names. Captain, you're headed towards the Bergtesgaten, the seat of the Nazi leadership. Bergtesgaten, is that in our sector? Who else is trying to get there? How risky? Yes, sir. How risky? Nothing worse than today, Colonel Heinches says, but it's your call on how much risk to take or not. Iron Mike might not like it if you move cautiously, but that's his problem. Bergtesgaten, is that in our sector? No, but the 101st and French 2nd are going slow, Colonel Heinches says, briefly examining a map behind you. With the fall of Berlin, Berchtesgaden is probably the last major objective of the war in Europe, and Iron Mike wants us there first. What's the plan then, Major Flynn asks. I'm going to sip some coffee. I can sip some coffee in anticipation or listen, but I'm going to sip coffee because I like coffee. Colonel Heinches turns to Flynn and grins like a boy in a candy shop. Major, I want you to move down the Salzburg Road and enter Berchtesgaden from the north. Charlie Company will lead the 1st Battalion assault from the east. Heinches looks to you. And I suppose it falls to the captain here to spearhead the 3rd Battalion advance? It does, sir. Flynn replies and then looks at you. Well, Captain, what What are you waiting for? Get your ass in gear. Right away, O worthy commander, or salute. What do you do the first one? Fine, Colonel Hines replies evenly. Dismissed. The two superior officers turn their attention to matters relevant to their pay grade. Something about using German cars to speed things up. Your column roars off down the Autobahn once more. The agile Stuart tanks lead the way. Your jeeps and trucks follow, with the lumbering Shermans bringing up the rear. The road is still and placid for the first mile, save for the burnt-out and shattered vehicles which litter the sides of the road, their rusting hulks, stripped tires, and tread. You follow the highway for a while as it runs along the banks of the Weissbach River, but before long the column comes to a screeching halt at the sight of a blown bridge. You deploy the company and send out scouts. It isn't long before Dearborn strolls over. There's a farmer's bridge off a secondary road down a ways. It may serve, though I question its ability to withstand the weight of our heavier vehicles. Deal with the problem, Dearborn. Accept a short delay. Dearborn may gain combat fatigue. I'll look to the bridge myself. Ensure delay, improve crossing chances. Call on the battalion engineers to come up. Incur a sizable delay, greatly improve crossing chances, or get the men across now. I'll look to the bridge myself. You head down the dirt road until you find a wooden-covered bridge. The timbers are intact, though the weathered signs on either side specify carts and wagons only. Deal with the problem, Dearborn. Dearborn may gain combat fatigue. Reinforce that bridge, incur delay, improve crossing chances. Call on the battalion. Okay. Reinforce that bridge. Dearborn puts his men to work. It only takes a little while to shore up the oldest timbers and brace the planks. That done, there's nothing left to do but cross. Dearborn thumbs out a cigarette, lighting it with the smoldering remains of the one already between his lips before he notes, "It appears that celerity and caution are evenly balanced in this affair." Well, we'll have to use what we've got. He acquires idealism, combat fatigue 20, realism 1. We'll get across somehow. Zeal, combat fatigue 10, realism 1. Let's think this over for a minute. He advances cunning. It's my call and Major Flynn's orders. He advances professionalism, combat fatigue 10, realism 1. Or it's my call and my orders. He advances discipline, combat fatigue 20, realism 1. We'll just let him advance cunning. Let's think it over for a moment. Certainly, Captain. Dearborn notes, a pause for thought is always appreciated. You shift your attention back to the farmer's bridge. Leave the tanks behind. All tanks left behind, delay. Send only the trucks across. All tanks left behind, slight chance of casualties, even chance of delay. Have the trucks cross, then the light tanks. The medium tanks will be left behind. Very low chances of heavy casualties, even chance of a delay. Everyone crosses, low chance of casualties. Cross at full speed, even chance of casualties, reduced delay. I'm gonna bring the light tanks. I think I can live with only Stuarts. So the medium tanks will be left behind, very low chance of heavy casualties, even chance of a delay. Give the order and the tanks ease out of the column. The men march across, then the tanks inch forward over the bridge one by one. The timbers creaking beneath the wheels. Afterward, the Stuart tanks follow. The trucks, then afterward the Stuart tanks follow. Wood creaks and keeps creaking as the light tanks rumble onto the wood. The tentative advance continues past noon. The commander of the lead Stuart suddenly waves a flag your way. He points toward a cornfield. Its green stalks too low to conceal 3 figures lying prone amidst the earth. Soldiers, civilians, or refugees? First Sergeant Grant asks as he passes over your set of binoculars. The only way to know is to stop for sure is to stop and see. Second platoon should be up for it. Keep going, but have Sparks radio battalion. Test professionalism, chance of trust loss, and combat fatigue. Halt, shake out a platoon, and investigate. Test second platoon's officer's doctrine or discipline. Very low chance of casualties or delay. Leave a platoon to handle this. Test officer doctrine or discipline. Even chance of a delay and officer combat fatigue. Or open fire on the figures. Test zeal, even chance of gaining combat fatigue. I can go with a very low chance of casualties or delay. Halt, shake out a platoon, and investigate. You give the order and Grant shakes out rouse second platoon for the maneuver. The second platoon holds their fire until the figures are coaxed into explaining themselves. Turns out they're Czech refugees, or close enough to it, judging by the way Rao winces at their accents. The sight of the scarecrow frames seals the deal. You send them down the road. Someone will take care of them. In the meantime, the advance resumes. The thickly forested valley draws in close. A mountain looms ahead. Motors grumble as you leave the autobahn to ascend winding roads. The trees soon thin out to reveal a town of white houses and red roofs amidst an expanse of sprawling foothills. This is Bergtesgaten, the last redoubt of the Nazi party. The idyllic mountain town already has guests. American soldiers and vehicles already prowl the streets. Civilians mill about the streets and create an almost carnival-like atmosphere. 1st Battalion beat us by a long yard, Grant says, and lets out a sigh. I'll be drinking on this for weeks. White sheets flutter out of innumerable windows. German soldiers are being rounded up for a walk out of town and down to the prisoner of war cages. There is no fight. Lieutenant Stern pounds over and points up the slope of the nearby mountain. Let 1st Battalion have the town, Captain. Hitler's Eagle's Nest is the real prize. There's a chalet up there, big, grand, and in some cases, bombed. A small group could lead the way, picked men from each platoon. 1st Sergeant Grant lets out a big whistle. I remember seeing newsreels in school about that place, Captain. Hitler, Goering, Himmler, and all. They all have lodges up there. There should also be a barracks for those Kalev of SSers. At least according to Regiment's intel, Stern notes. If there's anyone important around, that's where they'll be. Bet someone would like it on their service jacket. Stern advances professionalism, combat fatigue +10, realism +1. You never know what you might find by looking. Stern advances cunning, combat fatigue 10, realism 1. We better hurry. Stern advances zeal. Let's do our best. Stern advances idealism, combat fatigue 20, realism 2. We'll advance until we find the enemy and destroy him. Stern advances doctrine, combat fatigue 20, realism 2. Let's advance cunning. You never know what you might find by looking. A great deal, I hope, Stern replies, his gaze fixed upon the Eagle's Nest. The mission: secure the barracks building. The men suffer no casualties. The notes on your glossy tourist map indicate numerous landmarks. Goering's chalet, greenhouse, Hitler's Berghof, among others. Whew. All right. So, all right, not much of a scenario. That having been said, I really need to put an end to the episode because this has been really long. So, that is all for tonight. Well, it's good. This is the early episode. That's all for this morning, my nerds. I have had fun. I hope you all have had fun, and I will see you on the other side.